I think it's time to switch planning apps. I'm leaning towards moving away from GoodNotes and into Noteful. So in April, I split my time between the two. Hi, I'm Carrie from InvisArt Planners, and I talk about all things digital planning on this channel. March was so unproductive. We had a lot going on away from work, and there was so much rain. April was better, and I'm pretty much back on track. But I didn't really use my weekly planner too much over the last couple of months. This was supposed to be a monthly plan with me, but today I'm going to show you how I set up a week in my planner so I can get back on track with it, and how I use this digital planner as my dog journal too. I'm also going to show you how I split my time between the two apps. I've used GoodNotes for years, but I've been a bit frustrated with it, and I've been wanting to try Noteful for a while because they have layers and multiple text styles, so I figured why not try now? I've dabbled in it here and there, but this is the first time I've really taken the time to use it for a digital planner, this month I used it for my dog journal. And I did a little bit of setup, so I'll take you along for that today too. I'm still using GoodNotes for my weekly planner, but honestly, I'm not sure how much longer I'll be using this app. So let's start off with my weekly planner in GoodNotes. I chose to keep my weekly planner here instead of my dog journal because everything here is pretty straightforward and already set up, and you'll see in a bit why layers and textiles are more useful in my dog journal right now. This actually ended up being the only week in April that I filled in. It's partly due to a planning funk that I'm in, but it's also partly due to my frustration with this app. But how I plan each week stays the same. The first thing I do is I determine what my main tasks or projects or focuses are for the week, and use that to guide how I use each day. When I'm not using this planner, I write everything out on a piece of paper or in a random notebook, which, it's not ideal, but I guess it's better than nothing. The next thing I do is I add in my weekly habits, which really don't change from week to week. I like to focus on a few habits until they become muscle memory, and then I'll slowly add another habit or swap another one of them out. But I'm actually thinking about removing the one for brushing our dog's teeth, because that's become a really solid part of my evening routine, and I don't think I need the added motivation that this widget used to provide me with. I wish I could say the same thing about using sunscreen daily. That's a work in progress. The next thing I like to do is add in any plans I have in the weekly widget. I'll add things like the days we play pickleball or appointments, or this week we had a play to go to. I'll also add focuses for the first couple of days of the week. I used to try and plan out each day of the week during this planning session, but by midweek, it'd normally change. Sometimes other more important work would pop up. Sometimes I'd be so focused that I'd get way more done than expected, and sometimes it'd be the opposite and I'd get a lot less done than I'd hoped. So it makes more sense to take it a day or two at a time for me. And the last bit of planning that I do is add in my side quest and work to-do lists. The side quest list is for personal to-dos that normally have to do with errands and stuff around the house. The work list is for expanded to-dos related to maybe my main focuses or projects that I'm working on for the week, but also other miscellaneous stuff that I do want to take care of. Though normally once I know what projects I'm focusing on for the week, I usually use my Notion project tracker to track those specific tasks. The final two things I do are my favorite part of planning the week. I add in a widget for daily gratitude and two of my favorite picks from the last couple of weeks. I've always wanted to incorporate a daily gratitude practice into my life, and this has been the easiest way to do it, which has helped me be consistent with it. Every time I had tried to do this in the past, I didn't know where I wanted to write it down or what I wanted to put it in or how I wanted to format it. So having something preset like this has really been a game changer. And taking a couple of minutes at the end of the day to reflect on something good that happened, no matter how rough the day was, helps me unwind and reset for the next day. And a really quick tip. I use iOS Pages to add a border and a shadow to some of these pictures. We used to be able to just drag and drop them from Pages into GoodNotes, but for some reason it gets stuck on the loading screen right now. To work around that, I drag and drop the pictures from Pages into the Files app, and then drag them into GoodNotes. When this error first occurred a couple of years ago, I even had to change the format of the images in the File app, like you see me doing here. I changed the format from HEIF to PNG because the HEIFs used to not work with GoodNotes, but luckily now it does. So at least this time we can eliminate that step, but hopefully it's something that gets fixed soon. And while I've been frustrated with GoodNotes recently, they did add a couple of tools that I'm really excited about. We can now lock individual images and text boxes, and you can learn more about that in the video linked in the corner or the description below. We can also now choose our own custom folder color. To do that, go to the folder you want to change the color of, tap on the arrow next to the folder name, and choose Customize Color. From here, it's a lot like choosing a pen color in GoodNotes. You can use a GoodNotes preset, or choose a custom color, or use the color wheel to choose a color, and even type in a hex code. Hopefully, they'll keep it up with these types of updates. But for now, it's time for me to try another app. Okay, so switching to my dog journal. I started it in GoodNotes, and this is what it looks like so far. I love having a dedicated space to keep track of what's going on with our dogs and do a bit of quick memory keeping. I finally started because our puppy isn't really a puppy anymore, and it really drove home the fact that time just goes too fast. And I want to be able to remember some of the day-to-day stuff that I'd normally forget because, I know it's not possible to remember all of it or write it all down, but this way I get to hold on to some favorite moments. I use the monthly calendar and phase page like I do in my weekly planner. I add pictures, highlights, events, and little notes. The weekly pages expand on what happened that week, with more space for stories and pictures. And I really love having this space to tell stories. Okay, so switching into Noteful. I'm going to start by building the sticker that I use for when we walk our dogs. I used a digital sticker from our pet care set, some text, and the highlighter tool, so it'll be easy to change the color of the text and the highlighter each month. The first thing I did when I first started using Noteful was add in all of my colors using hex codes from GoodNotes. And I love so much that the pen and text tools share a color palette. It makes so much more sense than having two separate palettes. It's small things like this that have made Noteful such a pleasure to use. I've been wanting to try a different planning app for a while because GoodNotes has been feeling sluggish, buggy, and it crashes a lot more than it used to. It's always jumping pages or selecting different parts of the page when I'm trying to write text and select images, and it's frustrating. In all fairness, it could partially be due to the fact that I do have an older iPad, but I also haven't been having the same problems in Noteful. I was also hoping that GoodNotes would slowly add tools like layers or additional text styles. And though they have been adding things like locking images and text, an eyedropper tool for colors, and custom folder colors, I don't really need any of the new major features, like the AI-driven and collaborative ones. So the bloat hasn't been worth it for me, and it feels like the app is moving in a different direction than I had hoped. And that's okay. It just means it's time for me to look for something new. I would have sooner, but I have a legacy account and I haven't had to subscribe. If I did, I probably would have tried a new app a long time ago. And I started with Noteful because I've always been intrigued by their layers tool. And so far, I've been really loving it. I specifically decided to use my dog journal in Noteful because I know the layers will be super useful when I add in photos and widgets and then write on top of them. So once I saved these pre-formatted stickers, which was as easy to do as it is in GoodNotes, I moved on to journaling about a recent week. And as I was doing that, I noticed that I prefer how the sticker tool looks in Noteful, with the slightly gray background and more space between stickers. I usually sit down with this journal at the end of each week or after every couple of weeks to add stories and images. But I really don't spend too much time in it during the week. I usually check in every couple of days or so to add a quick handwritten note about what the dogs did and what I might want to expand on later. As you saw, it doesn't look pretty. Sometimes I'll throw in a picture or two that I want to use later. but the most important thing is that I don't spend too much time in it. I'm just trying to keep it as simple as possible, so I'm more likely to maintain this journal. Then when I do go in to add stories and format the pictures, I clean up the weekly widget with stickers like the one I just made and labels to make them look better and more legible. I like to add little notes too if there's something that stood out, like a longer walk than normal, or maybe if one of them was more grumpy or happier than usual. For the journaling and memory keeping part, I add pictures, picture frames, and sticky notes that I can write stories on. Every week is a little bit different, but it doesn't take too much time because everything fits on a grid, so I don't have to spend too much time thinking, or overthinking really, about what goes where and figuring out the perfect layout. This was my biggest barrier when I tried to do something like this in the past. Having a blank page and unlimited options was just exhausting when all I wanted to do was some quick memory keeping. Some weeks I'll add more pictures and other weeks I'll add more writing, and I think this week was a pretty good balance between the two. The 2 single images I added are my favorites from that week, and I left a little handwritten note about Teddy's birthday toys in this bottom one. I usually expand on stories and events from the week, but if I don't feel like anything was particularly memorable, I spend time reminiscing on personality quirk or time going by too fast, which is pretty much the entire theme of this page. In one picture frame, I wrote about Teddy, who recently turned 1, and I'm still wondering where our little fluff ball went. I blinked and he went from 15 pounds to 60. And in another, I wrote about Cody, who's on his way to 13, and how? He's our first little dog, and I didn't realize how time seems to slip by more quickly with smaller dogs. They don't grow or age as noticeably as bigger dogs. And outside of a bit more white hair and maybe less speed on walks, in a lot of ways he looks like he did when he was 2. In this journal setup, there's a lot of jumping around because I edited out a lot of pauses and tapping on the wrong tools because I'm still trying to find a rhythm in Noteful. It took a little bit because I kept working on the wrong layer or I didn't have the layer I was looking for made yet, and I'm still getting used to where the tools are. But I love that I can have all of the tools on the side of the screen like it is. Moving horizontally to change tools feels a lot better because it follows the flow of the page a lot more for a landscape planner. If I were using a portrait planner, I'd probably move the bar back to the top. I know that we can move the tool options in GoodNotes, but you can't move the whole toolbar, and I really like this option in Noteful. I also love how easy it is to move objects to the correct layer. We can even move stuff to a layer that's locked. We can't move it or edit it in any other way, but we can still move stuff onto a locked layer, and I find it super helpful, and I've used it several times already. As I was working in Noteful, I noticed that the page didn't jump to a different spot when I was zoomed in, or another page altogether, whether I was zoomed in or not. I think part of it might be because the palm rejection is better in Noteful. I'm not really sure. But when I was using GoodNotes, I started placing my hand on the screen softly and slowly to try and not trigger a selection of any kind. Because when I did at a normal speed, it read my hand like it would a finger or an Apple Pencil. And it would either select what was under my palm, jump to a different part of the page, or again, jump to another page altogether. And even when I went slowly, it would sometimes jump around and select something I didn't want. I'm not really sure if this is everyone's experience, but it happens to me pretty frequently, and it's really, really frustrating and completely breaks the flow of planning or journaling or writing. So this has been a really refreshing change of pace. Anyway, going back to this week's journal, I've been having so much fun with this one, especially now that I'm using Noteful. I didn't realize how much it felt like I was fighting the app when I was using GoodNotes, especially when it came to simple things like selecting text and images. It's really refreshing to use an app that's not super laggy, doesn't jump pages randomly, and I can select the things that I want reasonably easily. So for now, I prefer Noteful, and I'm seriously considering moving my weekly planner here soon. What app have you been using for your digital planner? Let me know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video and picked up a couple of useful tips. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to see more videos like this. And if you want to see more Plan With Me's or learn more about digital planning, check out these videos. Until next time, bye!